Professor Emma Hill is chair of NTU's Asian School of the Environment. She is also the lead PI of INVEST, which is a national research project on understanding geohazards in the region. She is also the co-author of a recently published review on the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami. Thanks so much for joining us, Prof. Emma. I was wondering if you can help me and the audience understand how movements in the Earth cause earthquakes in the Southeast Asian region.
So here in Southeast Asia, we're surrounded by what we call the Southeast Asian Ring of Fire. And this is a series of plate boundaries where we see lots of earthquakes, also lots of volcanoes. And offshore Sumatra, it's the plate boundary with the Indian-Australian tectonic plate. The big picture is that basically the seafloor of the Indian Ocean and what's below it is diving underneath of Sumatra. And that seafloor, it's not nice and smooth, so it's rough. So as it moves under Sumatra, it gets stuck. There's friction, and that friction keeps it stuck for hundreds of years, but the plate is still moving. And so a lot of stress builds up. So much stress builds up that it overcomes that friction and bang, it slips forward. It's a sudden release, exactly. And in the case of the 2004 earthquake, that sudden release, it caught up by about 20 meters in some places. So that's like almost 2 double-decker buses in length. So imagine that much rock suddenly moved. That will create a lot of shaking. And it also bends and buckles the seafloor a lot. That will move a bunch of water, and that's what generates the tsunami as well.
Right. So just now you mentioned the plate moved by like 20 meters, right? How did it affect like the ground level on the surface?
So when you move the plate by that much, you get a lot of bending and buckling. In some places, you'll see entire coral reefs that just got uplifted instantaneously in that earthquake, whereas in other places, you'll actually see villages that got completely flooded.
So Prof, there has been a lot of scientific advancement since the 2004 event, right? I was wondering, from a research point of view, what is a big question that you want to ask for this region?
One thing to be aware of is it's not like the entire plate interface suddenly jumps forward in one go and generates some massive earthquake. It actually breaks in pieces, and that's what happened in Sumatra. Something that really puzzles us is why does it sometimes break and generate a magnitude 9.2 earthquake, and sometimes it's this little dinky thing that doesn't really shake much. What causes these segments? Why are earthquakes sometimes really big and sometimes really small? And where are the places that haven't broken yet because they're the really dangerous ones? And a lot of that understanding will come from understanding what is being subducted exactly. Like, are there seamounts in some places that might be changing the way that these patches on the megathrust behave? So it's about figuring out how can we forecast where and how big future earthquakes would be. It's still a really big question.
What is that one big shocking thing that you have learned or discovered?
Back in 2010, there was the 2010 Mentawai earthquake. And that was unusual because it generated a much bigger tsunami than we expected based on the size of the earthquake. And we hadn't really expected that the shallow part of the megathrust could be so dangerous. And now there's been more research and we understand that to be the case. But back then it was really quite a shock at the time.
Just before you go, I wanted to ask, is there anything you want to add about the current state of research in Southeast Asia?
There's still a lot we should worry about. There's a big seismic gap remaining, so there's still a lot of work we need to do in terms of preparedness and building resilience. But the thing that does give me hope is there's a lot of amazing young Indonesian scientists who are now putting their minds to study this, as you saw from your video series. So that to me is really a hope for the future.